What's the most f-ked up thing someone has told you about themselves after barely getting to know them? I, 25F at the time, was at A&E in the UK. I got discharged and was waiting for my taxi outside. This buff shirtless dude, covered in tattoos, they were decent too, emo, comes over and asks for a light. I bought a Zippo for novelty, so I obliged. We got to talking and he told me how he had just got out of prison after serving a life sentence for killing his father. After his father murdered his baby sister. Had his records on him and everything. He was at the hospital as he was diabetic and had experienced an issue of some sort after being released. I have no expertise here. I have never feared and respected a man so much in my life. I bought him a pint after my taxi decided it wouldn't be arriving. Decent bloke. We still speak 9 years later. My sophomore year in college, a girl who I had a group project with told me that her first SZUL experience was getting tag teamed by a couple of guys while she was in high school. I just told her, wow, that's pretty intense. She told me that she loved it and then I changed the subject. Until that point nothing SZUL had come up in the conversation. I remember the first friend I made at my new high school when I was 14 so vividly. Just as we were walking out of the classroom where we had just met, she turns around and cheerfully chimes, "Oh, by the way, I'm a vampire." Yes. Twilight had just come out. That entire school was so weird. I remember another girl noticed I had cut myself shaving and insisted on putting a band-aid on for me as she muttered things like, "You have no idea how difficult this is for me." Yes. She also claimed to be a vampire. Close bracket. Small towns. Man. I used to work at an animal shelter and we had several people who would come volunteer to help out. One of the women who came there on a regular basis went to lunch with me. She was such a sweet woman. A little older than I was at the time. She proceeded to tell me that she used to go to the park and give old men blowjobs because she felt sorry for them. WTF. That is too weird. What animal shelter? On a first date with a girl, she leaned in and whispered, "I f-ked 2 guys last night. Obviously consecutively. Not at the same time. I'm not a WHRE. Full stop." After that, we had a nice, perfectly normal conversation until she had a couple of drinks. At that point, she leaned back in and said, "I'm completely shaved. Do you want to see?" And promptly lifted her skirt to show it. When she did, she said, "I never wear underwear. They get in the way." Full stop. After I talked to a few friends, including the one who set us up, they all said that she was desperate to be the center of attention and slightly crazy. At 10:00 at night, I was at a rest stop and a guy came up to me and asked, "How would you like to save a life? Tell me a joke and I may not kill myself." Whoa. You got emotionally mugged. First night at my first base right out of tech school in the USAF. "Hi. My name is Mike and I'm into hardcore S&M. Still had to share a room with him a few nights." My wife loves to tell this story. Her first day at a new company, she was to meet another employee who would show her around the office. She met her in the lobby and on the elevator ride up to the office she proceeded to tell my wife how her husband has gained some weight and she is considering starting an office affair with a co-worker who is really into fitness and has muscles. Apparently she made a gesture where she fanned herself while saying muscles. Like literally, my wife met this lady 5 minutes earlier for the first time in the lobby and she is already unloading all this stuff on her. My manager at my job in high school decided to tell us about her suicide attempt on my very first day. She was like, "One day, I decided to take some pills and end it all. I grabbed a pill bottle out of my mom's cabinet and took a handful without even looking at what it was and then laid down to die. I was so surprised to wake up in the morning perfectly fine. Confused. I checked the bottle to see what I had taken. Yeah. It was estrogen." Randomly met a fellow motorcycler at a gas station at 2 AM. Told me he was going to confront his wife and her lover. Not right then. Just in general. Then we rode the last 100 miles to St. Louis because he happened to be going the same way. I hope you didn't keep going on your way to his wife's house. I sat next to this quiet kid in my Spanish class. He was awkward and had a subtle speech impediment. One day, I tried to spark conversation with him and he told me that he considered murdering his parents. I was doing my practice in a hospital. They brought a young man in the neuro clinic. He was my first patient. He was around 30 and he had fallen from a tree while working. He turned out to have a complicated neurological condition that had nothing to do with his fall. He was also diagnosed with severe depression. He was in there for months and no one ever visited him. The only time he felt a bit better was when I visited him and did some tests on him. He said, "It's nice when you come and make me play with the colored toys and make me draw things." One day he was looking out of the window. When I came in he looked me dead in the eye and told me, "You know, if the windows didn't have protective bars, I'd jump right out." Not sure if this is FK'd up. Definitely nowhere near what I have read on this thread already. Met this dude in college when he moved into the dorm. Goofy looking redneck kid from the San Antonio area. I'm getting to know him when I notice his Spice Girl CD. This was like 2003. And I commented on it. He then goes into this long story of how he was at the Walmart in San Antonio, looking at the CDs in that store and just happened to have bumped into Ginger Spice, who invited his underage ass into the tour bus that no one had noticed. And he lost his virginity to all the Spice Girls at once. My thought was, thank you for this story. I know instantly that I can never trust or believe anything you ever tell me again. It's been almost 20 years and I still can't believe that was something he said in the first 5 minutes of meeting me. A sigh if you wanna be my lover. I picked up a hitchhiker once that told me he left California after his wife died because the cops were asking too many questions. Co-worker took out a client for a business lunch at a small town restaurant. He asks the waitress, "How are you?" to be polite. She proceeds to go on a 5-minute spiel about how terrible her ex-husband is and how he's ruining her life and how she feels like crap because of it. After she finishes, takes their order and leaves, the customer says, "So you must know her pretty well?" Only well enough to say hi in passing. Oh. So then that was just as awkward for you as it was for me then? Yes. Yes, it was. Had to do a course and the trainer arrives. Introduced himself to the small class of maybe 4-5 people and asked a bit about each of us. He then told us his wife had died 2 years ago and he tried to kill himself. I felt horrible for him, but he seemed genuinely happy with where his life was. I ended up staying back after class and having a beer with him at the bar. He was a really cool guy. I hope he is still happy. Worked with a new girl one night. Literally didn't know her name. She told me about every SZOL experience of her life. That she wanted to try anal, but kept having flashbacks to her uncle upping her. How her mom would invite guys over for a train when she was a teen and a shit-ton more. Bonus point. She turned me into HR because she told her fiancé that she told me all this. He freaked out, so she lied and told them I harassed her. Some guy next to me on the bus once went into a long elaborate story about how he burned his house down for insurance money like 3 weeks prior. I wouldn't have believed it if his hands didn't have massive burn scarring. Lol. Dude probably just had scared hands and makes up a new story whenever someone stares at them. Used to ride the bus every day to get to one of my first jobs. Old dude on it had a removable section of his face. I probably heard about 30 different versions of how it happened when he caught kids staring. Met an old friend's girlfriend one day. Well, he was hardly a friend and more of like a friend of a friend. We hung out one day. His girlfriend was with us. First time meeting her. And that night she randomly sent me nudes and said that her boyfriend wanted to have a threesome with her and myself. I kindly declined. If they asked me today, I love the way you included your current stance on the subject as well in the story. For that, I enjoy this answer the most on this thread. I was temping at an office and the trainer told me about her ex. He was cheating on me. Not just with one woman but many different women. That's terrible, I replied, thinking we'd move on. Nope. No, it was worse than that. He filmed himself shagging the women. And then streamed the compilation of his conquests onto our TV. For me to watch. I was unsure of what to say, and after a couple of minutes of me being quiet, he then said, when it was Valentine's Day a few days later, he gave me a present. He let me start unwrapping the present. In Pass the Parcel style, each layer had a used condom that he'd used to shag the women in his compilation video. To say I was sat there not knowing what the FCK to say is an understatement. I'm just sitting here thinking, why would one keep unwrapping that present after the first layer? An old man asked me if I knew when the next bus would arrive, and we ended up getting into a nice conversation that somehow led to him telling me about his daughter being in an abusive relationship with a guy who made her move far away from him and his family so they couldn't help her. We were both crying by the time the bus arrived. This girl started talking to me. And everything was sunshine until she kept going on about how she would plan a murder. And how often she blackmails people. I promptly ended the conversation and haven't talked to them since. Met a woman who worked child care. She told me all about how difficult it was working with abused boys and how she got too close to one and had SOL feelings. Showed me a picture and said anyone who meets him thinks he is really nice and not to judge him on looks. Then the barman came back with my drink and I left. That was the entirety of conversation with a very drunk and probably shitty social worker. Yeah. That really sounds like pedo talk. There. That woman should not be allowed to be around children. I was training a new coworker. Literally the first day I met him and our first conversation. He told me that he walked out on his wife and kids 30 years ago because he was a raging alcoholic. But now he had turned his life around and reconnected with one of his adult sons and was very actively a part of his grandson's life. He talked about his grandson constantly every single day. His other son refused contact with him. But he understood the reasoning and didn't fault him for it. He was such a nice guy. Killed by a drunk driver a year after I met him. A coworker implied there was illegal activity going on among the hospital staff. It was my first day. During the training period at a new call center gig. One of my new co-workers got on the subject of how she'd done time for 5th degree assault. And the amount of time she spent in jail was because the prosecutor had it out for her. Without thinking, I have no filter. I blurted out, there's no way you get that kind of sentence for that without priors. Co-worker's response. Sounding defeated. Yeah. Not technically the question. But my mother was an avid oversharer. It wasn't until I was older that I started to realize just how uncomfortable she would make people. There's a lot of stuff she would pass off as normal. Or even joke about. That was really weird. The first time I met a friend in person from online. She spent the entire time telling his mom about how I was maybe sexually assaulted but she wasn't sure, and then about her own sexual experiences. Within a week of moving here, my husband had learned about her abortions. How she lost her virginity. How I was probably harmed as a kid, but who knows. About my F-King brother's sex life. About how he's not having good sex with his wife. And so many more things that he really didn't need to know. Edit. Just started a new job, said good morning to a lad there. His reply, I've just found out my lass has been getting back scuttled behind my back. I didn't even know his name. My favorite question to ask new colleagues was, so, what do you do in your free time? First person I asked. A shitty ton of drugs. Was flying out of China, for Christmas I think. And an expat guy asked me for a smoke at the airport. Turns out he was being deported. Handcuffed and with armed guards. He told me it was cause he was a med student and he and his buddies had been stealing pharmaceuticals from the training hospital. No more med school for him. Edit. A med student. A guy shouted sex with dogs is good for you. At me after we looked at each other from 50 feet away on the sidewalk. Vlad the locksmith. We were doing a vehicle recovery job together. Just met the guy and we were talking on the way to the vehicle across town. I mentioned, yeah, my wife is pregnant and we are having a kid in 2 months. He light up. Vlad says his sort of girlfriend is pregnant too. Well, she's not really his girlfriend but his brother's very recent ex-girlfriend. But he's mad because he thinks it was her that gave him an STD. We get to the vehicle and I mention it's a bad neighborhood. He agrees and pulls out his gun. Don't worry bro, I got your back. Long story short, we dip out with about 5 dudes looking pretty mad in the rear view mirror. Drunk girl, 17-18, at a party let me know that she'd stopped giving her dad blowjobs. I never saw her again and never found out if he got busted. The number of women that come up with being uphead by family members is honestly very worrying. I met a random person at a party once who ended up having a deep conversation about her mental and sexual abuse as a child. How it led to her developing borderline personality disorder as an adult. She told me that she somehow felt that I was in tune with other people's emotions without the need for vocal interaction, which attracted broken people to confide in me. I can't deny it because it kinda clicked a whole lot of situations and conversations I've had into place. That he stabbed his neighbor in the neck because he sexually assaulted his stepdaughter. I'd worked with him for 2 hours at this point. Honestly, what kind of parent wouldn't murder someone in defense of their kid? A guy I worked with told me he once jumped over a midget after only a few minutes of talking to him. That him and his twin brother were originally going to be 2/3 of a set of triplets. But his father took a baseball bat to his mother when she was pregnant with him. His brother. That's just vile. I didn't even realize there could be partial miscarriages. Actually, I think this might be the first time I've ever put any thought into the implications of miscarrying triplets. Before our first date was over, this guy told me about ending his engagement cause his fiancée cheated at a party. And then he opened up about his history of emotional traumas. Somehow, that didn't scare me off. And we've been married for 4 years now. In high school, I once briefly met this odd dude who wanted to join me and my friend's gaming club. He then proceeded to brag about all the keyboards he'd broken over his knee. Kind of a red flag. But I originally let it go as him trying to act tough to impress us. Next time I saw him, he stopped me in the hall and proceeded to tell me in great detail about frog dissection and how much he enjoyed doing it. Mind you, I'd only met him twice at that point. I noped the hell out of there and avoided him the rest of the year. I was sitting alone next to a river when I was 16. A 13-year-old girl comes up to me, says she thinks I'm cute and asks for my number. I give her the wrong one because I'm weirded out. Was at a party in high school and a dude I had classes with but never talked with got drunk and admitted that he f-ked his dog. When there was awkward silence, he then admitted that he had literally just f-ked his dog. Anyways, dude's in prison for zoophilia and pedophilia charges and has a kill with arms thread on him. Good riddance. In high school I met a boy in mythology class that I found cute. I'm shy so I never really talked to him until one day we were paired for a group project. Within 15 minutes he shared that he had been addicted to meth. Me, being a completely innocent nerd, responded cool. Oh, anyways, number 5 is patriarchals. I hate myself. A co-worker told me she was date-ped by a former co-worker and got pregnant by the rape. She had the baby and gave it up for adoption. In my senior year there was this cool kid, I was a nobody, came up to me and asked if I wanted to help him rob a local gas station. I laughed uncomfortably. And he said, nah, just f-kin with ya. But me and the boys are gonna get together and party. Wanna come? We robbed a gas station. He went to prison and never ratted me out for driving. Edit. I married his sister, divorced now, and she still, to this day, doesn't know. Edit. To my ex-wife and I would go visit him in prison. He never told and she never knew.